我今日開始啟示錄21章第1節。
The book of Galatians Chapter 21 verse 1.
我又看見一個新天地，因為先前嘅天地已經過去了，海也不再有了。我又看見有聖城新耶路撒冷由神那裏從天而降，預備好了，就如新婦裝飾整齊，等候丈夫。我聽見有大聲音從寶座中出來說：看啊，神的帳幕在人間，他要與人同住，他們要作他的子民，神要親自與他們同在，作他們的神。作寶座的說：看啊，我將一切都更新了。又說：你要寫上，因這些話是可信的，是真實的。
Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. Verse 5. He who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. Then he said, Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true.
父神，我多謝你俾我哋兩個話語。
Thank you for your word, Lord.
多謝你係為我哋預備一個美好嘅地方。
And also thank you that you prepare a good place for us.
話一切都係你好長遠嘅計劃。
All this is your is a result of your long-term planning.
按照你嘅智慧，你係為我哋預備救恩。
According to your wisdom, you prepare our salvation.
唔單止今生有福分。
Not only that we are blessed in this life.
尤其是喺永恆裏邊，你為我哋預備一個真係眼未曾見過，耳仔未曾聽過，心裏邊亦都想唔到咁美好嘅賞賜。
That you prepare us for eternity, whereas no eye have seen, no ears have heard, and it's beyond our imagination.
喺呢個人生呢個遙遠嘅道路嘅裏邊，喺求主你真係幫助我哋嚟到去安然嚟到度過一切，能夠勝過一切嘅試探引誘。
And that in this long road of light, may you carry us through, and that will not falter.
叫我哋最後都成為得勝嘅人。
That at the end we'll be victorious.
有盡享你嘅安息。
And enter into your rest.
我哋咁樣禱告，奉主耶穌基督聖名求。
We pray all in the name of in the wonderful name of Jesus.
阿門。
Amen.
上個主日我講到千禧年之後，呢個撒旦係會被釋放出嚟，然後佢迷惑世界上所有人咧，去攻擊基督嘅同埋屬基督嘅兩個營。
And last week we talked about after the millennium, the Satan will be relieved from the abyss, and he will to deceive the nations and to attack the camps of Christ and the people that belong to Christ.
然後天父喺榮耀裏邊降臨咧，係毀滅咗佢哋，同埋將撒旦咧係扔響呢個硫磺火湖裏邊。
Then God in his glory came down and destroyed them and threw Satan into the lake of fire.
神嘅榮光嘅榮耀咧，係將呢個天同埋地咧有形質嗰啲融化咗，係更新呢個世界成為新天新地嘅。
And that the glory of God not only melt the heaven and earth and all the things that are material, and from that it create the new Jerusalem, the new heaven and the new earth.
今日我哋嘅題目就係我哋永恆嘅居所，就係新嘅耶路撒冷。
And today our theme is our eternal home, the new Jerusalem.
我要解釋先嚇，呢個天地點樣係毀滅嘅
？Explain to you how the heaven and earth is being destroyed.
喺第一節同埋第五節裏邊所講到咧，喺呢個世界末日個嗰一剎刻咧，一剎之間啊嘛。先前嘅天同埋地，即係我哋而家現有嘅世界，係被毀滅，然後海都係消失咗嘅。
And in verse 1 and verse 5 of the scripture we read that in that one moment that the heaven and earth and even the sea would disappear.
我哋唔好以為神係創造咗新嘅世界俾我哋，嗱係呢個係翻新嘅世界。
We need to know that at that moment, God is not creating a new world or new heaven and earth for us, but rather that He have renewed this world.
我哋明白呢個字係更新，這一切我都更新咗。更新嘅意思就係我哋唔能夠把一啲冇存在嘅物件嚟到更新。
to renew that we cannot renew something that is not existing.
因為根本冇存在到，所以你唔能夠更新一樣嘢。
That you cannot renew something that is non-existent.
喺世界末日嘅時候，原來神將呢舊嘅天同埋地更新啦，但係唔係毀滅咗佢。
At the end of millennium, God renewed heaven and earth. Renewed the old and heaven and the old earth, but not He did not destroy them.
我哋要明白呢個更新嘅過程，其實咧就係根據呢個物質不變呢個定律嘅裏邊咧嚟到產生嘅。
And we can understand this through the law of conservation of matter.
因為所有嘅物質存在之後，唔能夠化為烏有嘅。
That all the things that are in existing, all the material, the matter, cannot become nothing.
喺呢個世界末日嘅時候，神嘅火嘅光咧係即係融化咗世上嗰個物質。
That the glory of God at the end time have melted all the material things.
所有能夠燃燒嘅都燃燒咗。
And all those that are inflammable are destroyed.
但係唔係等於佢哋唔存在喎。
It doesn't mean that they don't exist anymore.
最重要就係嗰啲唔能夠燃燒嘅。
Even those are non-flammable.
就係金屬之類咧，係會係被融化咗。
All the metal they are being melted.
等於我哋細個時候咧，我哋爸爸媽媽有陣時有啲譬如金戒指啊之類咧，有陣時話咧，即係唔好啱嘅時候，再去攞去熔咗佢，再做嗰一個。
It's similar to the process when we're young that our parents would take the rings, the gold rings that doesn't fit anymore, and they go to melt it down and make something else.
喺以賽亞書第51章第6節裏邊所講咧，呢個天咧係好似煙雲咁係消散咗，因為神嘅嚟嘅火嘅時候咧，啲火你知道有陽燭或者知道有氧氣咧，啲氧氣將嗰啲火咧更加加烈咁樣嚟燒咗去嘅。
And it mentioned in Isaiah chapter 51 that the heavens will vanish like smoke.
所以當神降臨嘅時候，呢個大氣層啊，所有嘅氣體咧，其實咧係被烈火之下咧係燒咗去，所以冇咗天嘅意思係咁嘅意思。
And so when they said that the heaven melt away, it really means that when from the glory of God, all the gases were being burned up.
但係呢個大氣層對我哋嚟講，喺呢個新世界嘅裏邊係冇作用嘅。
But you need to realize this atmosphere is no longer serve any purpose for us in eternity.
因為當我哋喺復活之後咧，我哋係一個靈體，我哋唔係一個血肉之體，唔需要呼吸空氣嘅。
Because at the time that we have a new body, a spiritual body, not a physical body as flesh and blood, we don't need to breathe air anymore.
喺彼得後書第3章12節同埋13節咧，都同樣解釋呢個過程，就係天係被火燒毀啦，係冇咗啦，然後有形質嘅咧係被烈火嚟融化咗。
Then also in 2 Peter chapter 3, it also tells us that the heavens was destroyed by fire, and all the elements were melted by the heat.
希伯來書第12章咧係講到呢個烈火嘅所有影響嘅就咩？佢話佢會嚟到震動呢個天同埋地，使到我哋唔被震動可以存留，被震動咧就係冇咗嘅。
And also in the book of Hebrews chapter 12, and also that the heaven and the earth were shaken by this glory, and all these were being destroyed or removed.
世界嘅末日。原來係神將呢個地球咧係融化咗嚟到更新佢，變成為新嘅天同埋新嘅地。
So this end of the world, as we know it is, earth, actually God is actually recreating or renewing the earth.
唔係一個新嘅天地，係一個翻新嘅天地嘅意思係咁樣。翻新嘅地球。
Not a created new heaven and earth, but rather a renewed heaven and earth.
嗱，所以基督徒經常講嘅説話就係信耶穌上天堂咧。其實係一個誤解呢個咁嘅真理。
Actually, when a lot of Christians said that you believe in Christ and you go to heaven, is really a misconception of this truth.
因為信耶穌咧，原來有一隻咧唔喺永恆裏邊，喺天上高裏邊嚟到唔知喺邊個空間裏邊居住，但係仍然喺留喺地上高，係一個翻新嘅新嘅天地。
And that when you are in paradise, there's not that you living somewhere up in the sky, we don't know where, but rather you are living in this new earth and new heaven and new earth.
咁啟示錄第21章第3節同埋第7節咧，係進一步印證咗信耶穌唔係上天堂嘅。
And also in the book of Revelation, chapter 20 and 21, verse 3 and 7, it also tell us that we are not really going to paradise with Christ,
乃係仍然留喺地嘅上高。
and that we are still living on earth.
第3節裏邊所講到咧，個神嘅帳幕要喺人間，他要人同住，要作佢嘅神，佢哋要作佢嘅兒女。
It said in verse 3 that God's dwelling place is among the people, and he will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them.
原來世界終結嘅時候係神，佢將佢嘅居所係搬到地嘅上高。
So at the end of the world, God have moved his dwelling place onto this earth.
幾年之前咧，我喺呢個查經班裏邊咧問呢個問題，到底我哋呢個新天新地喺邊一度咧？咁咧譚伯輝咧答得準，佢喺地嘅上高，佢知道，佢睇得到。A few years ago, there was a Bible study, and then I asked the same question. I said, "When will we be?" You know, and things like that. And then Danny Hum answered it right, and he said, "On earth." 但係個問題就係、神嚟到地上高，其實呢個係絕無僅有、好罕見嘅事啊！
We know that God's dwelling place on earth is something that's rare and unique.
通常咁高尚嘅，好似個皇帝一樣嘅，佢係山高皇帝遠，係咧重門深鎖，警衛森嚴。
You know, the God seems to be like a king. He lived in his palace, was under a heavy security and far away.
大多數皇帝都係咁嘅，距離人煙嘅，係要住一啲咧同人哋隔得好開嘅，可以保護到佢哋。
And very often, king lived in his palace, and he's far away from the people.
你會話神豈唔係一樣咩？喺舊約裏邊，邊我哋見得到嘅神嘅聖殿都係咁樣嘅安排。
Isn't God like that? Also, we can see in the Old Testament concerning the temple, it is the same way.
因為神聖不可侵犯啊嘛，神嘅聖殿安排到咧係啲有外院啲能普羅大眾只能夠去到外院裏邊咧，然後再接近呢啲唔可以噶啦。
And God is holy and inviolable, and people can only enter into the outer courts only.
而去到聖殿嘅即係大祭司，每年一次進到至聖所裏邊，甚至乎要帶咗呢個祭牲嘅血入去嘅。
And only the high priest is allowed to go into the Holy of Holies once in a year, and he have to bring with him the blood of the sacrifice.
你會話神嘅安排豈唔係咁樣咩？同呢啲其他嘅冇乜分別咩？
Isn't God the same and not different from the kings that we see on earth?
如果我哋係咁睇嘅時候，我哋只係睇到神一部分。
Well, that's what we see, that we are only seeing one aspect
原
of
來神
God.
有另外一部分，我哋好少睇到嘅。
There's another part that we rarely see.
冇錯，神係神聖不可侵犯，但係另一方面，神係好友善嘅。
Yes, on one hand, God is holy and inviolable, but on the other hand, He's also very friendly.
嗱，佢未創造人之前咧，佢係一個獨居。
Before He created man,
He
lived alone.
冇性嘅，但係點解佢創造人類？就係因為佢唔想一個就佔據所有嘅宇宙。
That he's alone without friend or companion, but he did not want to occupy everything by himself.
所以佢要創造啲人咧，其實係同佢分享佢一切嘅榮華富貴嘅。
So he created mankind to share everything with him.
因為佢創造啲人類嘅時候，佢係我哋嘅父，我哋嘅兒女，所以佢甚至乎願意我哋成為佢最親密嘅朋友。
And that when he created us, he became our father, and we his children, and that he was willing to share with us everything.
喺約翰福音第14章第23節裏邊所講嘅，主耶穌會話：人若愛我，亦必遵守我嘅道，我父亦都愛佢。聽住呢句話，並且我們即係天父同埋聖子聖靈，係要到他那裏同他同住。
That in John chapter 14, verse 23, it says, Jesus replied, anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them. And we, the Father, the Son, and the Spirit, will come to them and make our home with them.
唔係話你咁愛我，我將喺地上我攞上嚟我屋企裏邊，等你同我一齊住啦。
So it is not the same thing as that since you love me so much, I'll bring you to where I live.
神話我要搬到嚟同你一齊住。
But rather said, God, I will come and make our home with you.
個分別好大嘅。
That's a great difference in this.
當我哋要搬到神裏邊，就係我哋高攀神，但係呢個係難若登天嘅。
And if we have to move to where God lives, that means that we pull ourselves to God's level. That's impossible.
但係當神要搬到我哋嗰裏邊嘅時候咧，就係用神嘅方法，佢屈就佢紆尊降貴，搬到我哋裏邊同我哋居住，就係佢嘅主權啦。
But when God moved to live among us, that He condescended to move His dwelling and to live with us.
喺呢個南美嘅天主教裏邊有一個解放神學，就係仿效咗呢一個天父搬到平民嘅貧民窟裏邊，同呢個平等人係認同看齊嘅。
That in South America, the Catholics have a teaching they call liberation theology. That's to imitating God the Father, who will live among the lay person or the people, the lay person. So to identify with them.
一個領袖如果高高在上嘅話，好多時咧生人勿近。
A lot of time that you put oneself in a very high place, then no one can approach you.
但係如果一個領袖能夠咧，即係降到普通人嘅身份，同人好似看齊一樣嘅時候咧，係被人哋係贏取平民嘅厚愛同埋尊重嘅。
And if you can lower yourself to the level, to a level where you can identify with the people, then you will receive respect.
神話我要將我嘅家搬到響人間，響你裏邊，同你一齊嚟去住。
And Jesus said, and God said, He would bring His dwelling, set His dwelling place among His people.
唔單止咁樣，我哋要明白喎。如果你將人哋收到你嘅屋企裏邊，陌生人搬入你屋企裏邊咧，係唔容易一件事嚟嘅。
You know, it's not easy for you to invite some stranger into your home.
短期或者可能
，maybe short term is okay.
我諗我哋中國人好多都唔可以咁做啊，但係咧西人會容易啲，好喜客多啲，但係都唔容易嘅。
And certainly difficult for the Chinese. We will probably never do that. For Westerners, they are more habitable, so it's easier for them. But yet, it's still difficult.
因為你發現你嘅生活習慣會改變啊，要改寫啊，你個私隱權係損失咗嘅。
Because you have to change the way that your habit, your ways, and also that you lose your privacy.
所以如果你要將俾人搬到同人一齊住，人哋入到你屋企裏邊住嘅時候咧，其實要好大嘅決心同埋犧牲先可以嘅。
And to invite someone into your home, you have to be determined, and also you have to make sacrifices.
所以我哋明白到原來咧，神話要同我哋一齊住咧，我哋搬入佢屋裏邊嘅時候咧，係唔簡單一件事嚟嘅，因為神要將佢所有嘅生活習慣都改變咗嘅。
And for God to invite us into His dwelling place is not easy because God have to change everything the way He do things.
唔係一兩個月喎，係永永遠遠，我哋有咁多人麻煩佢啊，囉嗦佢啊，諸如此類嘅，唔簡單嘅，但係神係好願意。
It is not easy, not only for a month or two, it's for eternity. And people keep coming after you and acting after you. It's not easy.
我一陣會解釋到咧，神點樣歡迎我哋進入佢嘅家裏邊同一齊住。我而家未講嗰樣嘢。好啦，我繼續解釋就係第9節到21節裏面所講到關於呢個聖城嘅問題。
Let's continue. We'll look at verse 9 to verse 21. We referring to the holy city.
第9節裏面所講嘅天使話咧，我要將呢個新婦就係羔羊嘅妻子俾你睇。
In verse 9 it says that I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb.
然後第2節同埋第9節講咧新婦，即係同樣係講呢個新婦。喺呢個好特別一樣嘅。就係到底邊一個係新婦咧
？In verse 2 that we saw, and also in here in verse 9, it mentioned about the bride. So in the and who is this bride?
我哋經常係聽到間中啦，聽到咧人哋講話教會就係基督嘅新婦。
And sometimes we hear that the church is the bride of Christ.
但係今日我哋係要矯正呢一個咁嘅問題。
Today I want to correct this problem.
佢哋根據咧以弗所書第5章第22節到23節裏面所講嘅，基督係教會係基督嘅新婦。
That they refer to Ephesians chapter 5 verse 22 23 that they say that from there they thought that the bride of Christ is the church.
但我今日解釋教會 唔係基督嘅新婦。
But I want to explain to you today, the church is not the bride of Christ.
呢個經文以弗所書裏邊所講嘅係講到丈夫同埋太太嘅關係，應當係仿效基督同埋教會嘅關係。
In Ephesians chapter 5, it's teaching how that we, husband and wife, to imitate the relationship between Christ and the church.
係學習到基督點樣為教會捨己。
And to learn how Christ has sacrificed for the church.
但係佢根本係冇直接講到咧，教會就係基督嘅新婦喎，就係基督嘅妻喎。
But nowhere they mention that that the church is the bride.
只不過係按呢個咁嘅方法，就係佢捨己嘅方法。但係其實我哋要愛仇敵都可以捨己嘅，但係個仇敵唔係因為咁緣故成為我哋嘅妻子或者配偶。
And we just need in here that we need to learn to lay down our lives for because of love.
For our enemies, but it doesn't make the enemy your spouse, right? 我問你一個問題就係，響10個童女嘅當中比喻裏邊，個主角係咪預表教會咧？
And also in the parable of the 10 virgins, the main character is pointing to the church.
有新郎要去娶個新婦翻嚟，然後叫10個童女喺度等候佢，然後最深尾度娶咗妻翻嚟，然後咧10個童女有啲預備好，有啲冇預備好。咁你話呢個10個童女係預備邊個咧？
And just there's a groom who will go receive his bride, and there also accompany him with the 10 virgins. Some were ready, some were not ready. But who are these virgins?
教會一向嘅解釋嘅10個童女就係教會。
And for the church, they explained that the teaching was that these 10 virgins represent the church,
唔係呢個新婦，
and not the bride.
係從冇講過佢呢個係新婦嚟嘅。
And nowhere is it mentioned that the church is the bride.
喺呢個主耶穌個另一個比喻講到王為兒子娶親呢個比喻，周圍去拉啲人翻嚟。
And also when Jesus was giving the parable about the king's son who had a wedding and also invite people to come to this wedding.
你話教會係用邊個角色嚟代表咧？
So which character represent the church?
係被請嘅人，
It is those who were invited.
係參加呢個婚宴嘅人，
And those who are invited to the wedding.
係客人。
Those are guests.
同埋咧啟示第19章第9節裏邊一樣嘅，講到咧佢話羔羊婚宴被請嘅人係有福。
That in Book of Revelation chapter 19 is that blessed are those who are invited to the wedding supper of the Lamb.
好明顯嘅呢講被請嘅人咧，就係我哋啲教會啲人。
It's very obvious those who invited are the people in the church, of the church.
我哋係被請嘅客人，乃唔係呢個新婦。
That we are the invited guests and not the bride.
呢兩個比喻都證明一樣嘢，教會唔係扮演呢個新婦嘅角色。
And through these two parables, it proves to us the church does not take the place of the bride.
個原因因為主耶穌係冇可能結婚嘅。
And also, Jesus cannot really be married.
主耶穌話響復活之後咧，所有人好似天使一樣咧，係唔嫁唔娶。
And because Jesus mentioned that after the resurrection, there will be like angels. We will not be married or given to in marriage.
所以我哋冇任何一個人咧係會嫁俾基督。
So none of us will be married to Christ.
神亦都根本冇從未講過咧，教會就係教會就係神嘅媳婦。
And God never mentioned that the church is the bride.
我哋嘅身份就係神嘅兒女。
Our identity is our position, our
唔係
status
神嘅
is
媳婦，
the son and daughters of God, not God's bride.
我哋係主耶穌基督嘅弟兄姊妹。
And we are the brother and sister of Christ.
有邊個會娶自己嘅弟兄同埋自己嘅姊妹咧？
Who would marry their own sibling?
係冇人。
No one would do that.
以弗所書所講嘅係一個引用，係用咁嘅方法，係基督係捨身係去愛教會。
And in book of Ephesians, it tells us that God loved the church and He's willing to lay down His life for the church.
丈夫亦都係用同樣嘅方法捨身去愛佢嘅妻子。
And likewise, the husbands to do the same.
但係唔係因為咁嘅緣故， 教會就做咗基督嘅妻子。
But that doesn't mean the church become the bride of Christ.
咁樣咁多年以嚟，呢個謎就係話羔羊嘅新婦到底係邊一個咧？如果咁講
So the riddle is that who is this bride?
啟示錄第21章第9節裏面係特別係指明天使好明顯咁樣將呢個基督嘅新婦指俾約翰睇嘅。
But in the Revelation chapter 21, verse 9 to 10, it really it's really obvious that they pointed out
所以我哋唔需
clearly
要
who
猜測啦，
this bride
佢
is.
指到明嘅，我哋唔需要估嘅。
And we don't have to guess.
第10節就俾個答案啦。第10節就係佢將呢個約翰帶到高山裏邊，然後由嗰度咧係指俾約翰睇呢個從天而降嘅新城耶路撒冷。
So after verse 9, in verse 10, the angel showed John on the mountain, on the high and great mountain, that this holy city Jerusalem.
我哋要明白呢個新婦其實係象徵嘅人物。
And we know that this bride is just a figure, a symbolized figure.
係新婦就係呢個新城嘅耶路撒冷，就係神嘅居所，但係唔係教會。
And this bride is this new Jerusalem, the dwelling place of God, is not the church.
你可能會話唔係喎，聖經裏邊所講喺彼得前書前書第2章啊，佢話信徒咧係組成一個活嘅靈宮啊嘛，咁我哋豈唔係新耶路撒冷咩？
And but no, that you said that no. In First Peter chapter 2, it said that we are like living stones that were built into a spiritual house.
咁樣呢個係個靈宮啦，咁啊變咗係應當係新耶路撒冷啦。
So if we are a spiritual soul, so we should be the new Jerusalem.
但係呢個新耶路撒冷，如果你咁樣解釋嘅時候咧，都唔可能係教會組成。
Even if it does that explanation, it cannot be compiled of the church.
因為咧新耶路撒冷唔係只係教會入去居住喎。
Because in this new Jerusalem, and it not only the Christians or believers will enter and live in there.
教會只係一半嘅客人嘅住客。
And the church is only half of the tenant.
喂，仲有啲舊約嘅聖徒咧？
What about the believer in the Old Testament?
唔通我哋冇份啊？
Do they have no part in this?
如果係咁講嘅話，亞伯拉罕就白等一生係冇希望進到神所建造有根基嘅產業。
If that is so, then the Abraham have hoped it in vain to enter into the city that was built by God.
如果教會就係呢個新婦，就係呢一個新耶路撒冷嘅時候咧，咁大衛就白夢想有一日咧，佢話我豈會住在耶和華嘅殿中，直到永永遠遠。
And if it's the church, then David have really dreamed in vain to live in the house of the Lord forever.
所以呢一個新耶路撒冷唔係教會嚟嘅。
For that reason, the New Jerusalem is not the church.
唔係一班人，唔係一個人啊，唔係教會，亦都唔係舊約嘅聖徒。
It's not a person, not a group of person, not the church or the Old Testament saints.
乃係神嘅居所，呢個天上高耶路撒冷降到地上高。
Rather, it's the New Jerusalem, the dwelling place of God that came down from heaven.
而我哋呢班人會進入去裏邊居住，但係唔係等於我哋係嗰個主角，我哋只不過係一個住客。
And that we will enter and live in this city, yet that we are only a tenant.
原來呢個羔羊娶妻呢個咁嘅係一個象徵式嘅一個嘅比喻嚟嘅。
And also the wedding of the Lamb is also just a symbolism.
我哋如果留心睇聖經嘅時候咧，聖經間中咧俾我見得到咧，用一個婦人嚟去形容呢個天上高嘅耶路撒冷。
And be careful read the Bible. That occasionally they would describe this Jerusalem in heaven as a woman.
加太書講得好明顯，第4章第26節裏面所講嘅，佢話有一個婦人就係天上嗰個耶路撒冷，係一個未有結婚嘅，係冇丈夫嘅添嘅，同埋唔可以生育嘅。但係原來佢居然係我哋舊約同埋新約嘅聖徒所嘅母親。
In the Galatians Chapter 4, it's very clear state that the Jerusalem above is our mother, and she is the mother of the new and old Old Testament Christians.
而呢個係引用呢個以賽亞書第54章裏邊所講嘅，不懷孕不生育嘅要歌唱，未曾經過產難嘅要發聲高呼。佢話啲未有大個肚啊，佢生咗 BB 喎，所以呢個唔係一個常理嚟嘅。
And actually, the Galatians was referencing Isaiah chapter 54. It talks about the barren woman who never born a child, who was never in labor, and is something that, but yet have a lot of children. Yet this is illogical.
當然亦都唔係指呢個瑪利亞主耶穌嘅生母啦。佢所講係呢個新城耶路撒冷。
And of course, it is not referring to Mary, God's Virgin Mother, but it's really referring to the New Jerusalem.
然後我啟示第12章裏邊所講咧，一個婦人啊，記唔記得我幾個禮拜之前講到咧，就係佢係披戴太陽、月亮同埋12個星宿嘅，佢係懷孕生子。
And several weeks ago, we have mentioned also in the book of Revelation chapter 12, it mentioned a woman who was clothed with the sun, with moon under her feet, and crowned with 12 stars.
呢個都係象徵式嘅生呢個屬靈嘅孩子。
And she gave birth to a male child.
係，然後咧佢生咗個男孩咧，第5節咧係用鐵杖係管理國嘅。呢個我哋好清楚知道係主耶穌基督啦。
And he said that this male child will rule all nations with an iron scepter. We know that this is Christ.
因為佢會被提升到天上嗰神嘅寶座嘅裏邊。
And because he would be snatched up to God and be into his throne.
然後呢個大災難中期第17節裏邊所講咧，呢一個龍係向呢一個婦人發怒，與佢其餘嘅兒女係爭戰嘅。
And also during the tribulation that recorded in verse 17, chapter 12 of Revelation, that the dragon will fight against the rest of her.
我相信呢度所指嘅呢個兒女係當時喺呢個大災難裏邊信主一班猶太人有144000人。
And the rest of her offspring referring to those who believe in Christ during the tribulation, that's 144,000.
神一直咧用呢個擬人法嚟到描寫天上嗰個耶路撒冷。
And God is using personification to describe the New Jerusalem that's in heaven.
描寫佢咧係象徵式啦，描寫佢咧係一個好似媽媽一樣。
And metaphorically referring to as a mother.
係冇丈夫，冇同男人親近過，唔可能懷孕嘅，但係佢居然生出兒女出嚟。
That is unmarried, have no husband, have never be with a man, but yet cannot, and also barren, but yet have a lot of children.
無論如何，天使所指嘅答案就係呢個新耶路撒冷就係新婦啦。
But no matter what, the angel has pointed out that this bride is actually the New Jerusalem.
係一座神所經營嘅城，係神嘅家。
It is the dwelling place of God, a city that's built by God.
唔係一個栩栩如生一個婦人，嗱一個象徵式嘅一個婦人，係象徵式同埋基督係結婚。
It's not a real woman, but rather it's a personification of the woman.
但係更加重要就係呢個用婦人嚟代表，因為你知道咧，一個家咧係需要有個媽媽，你就會覺得咧係好溫暖嘅。
And they use the woman because in a family you need a female. In that way, you feel that this home have warmth.
我哋一係就要翻到呢個有溫暖嘅家嘅裏邊。
We need to return to a home that has warmth.
所以當日呢個新耶路撒冷從天上降嚟嘅時候，我哋會歸到呢個家嘅裏邊。
So when one day the New Jerusalem come down from heaven, then we will return to this home.
而呢一個就係亞伯拉罕一早所見到嘅神所經營同埋建造嘅有根基嘅城。
And this is the city that is built by God that Abraham saw.
呢個第一點我哋講完啦，而家睇睇幻想下亞伯拉罕所見到呢個將來要得為業嘅地方係到底係點樣咧
？And let's use imagination this time to see this place that Abraham saw, and how does it look like?
我哋睇睇啟示第21章第15至第21節裏面說，明白呢個聖城嘅美麗到係點樣，使到我哋能夠心源向往，有切慕去得着咧。
And we look in the verse 15 to 21, and look at how beautiful that this city is, so that we would have a desire and to receive it as an inheritance.
我唔讀嘅經文啦，我哋睇一睇啊。第一，我要指出咧就係呢個聖城咧係好靚嘅。
the first thing that I wanted to point out to you that this city is beautiful.
佢18節裏面所講有12個根基咧係牆係碧玉做嘅，係同用極寶貴嘅呢個貴重嘅寶石嚟到修飾嘅。
And verse 18, verse 19 said that the walls is made of jasper and the city is pure gold.
值得提嘅，值得解釋俾大家聽咧。18節裏面所講咧，城係精金嘅，但係點解會好似明淨如玻璃咧？
And then something we need to is worth us mentioning is that the wall was made of jasper and the city of pure gold, as pure as glass.
11節咧仲更加進一步講嘅，唔單止明淨好似玻璃啊，仲好似水晶啊，水晶比個玻璃更加貴重、更加靚喎。
And also that in verse 11 it said that the city is like crystal, clear as a crystal.
我哋要知道呢個城嘅城牆如果用金做嘅話，金係唔透光噶嘛，咁點解精金會突然間變成玻璃咧？
And you know that when the city is made of gold, and yet we know the gold is opaque. So how could they be like a crystal?
第11節咧，其實俾到我嘅答案就係咧，因為城中有神嘅榮耀，即係神嘅榮光咧射透咗呢個城，連城牆都透咗光啦。
And verse 11 again gives us the answer that it's because of God's glory. God's glory has shined through all the walls of the city.
但係問題係咁喎，我哋世人都公認一樣嘢咧，光咧係唔能夠透過金㗎，冇咁嘅可能㗎嘛。
As we know that we cannot that the gold is not the light cannot shine through gold.
冇呢個咁嘅可能，因為世界上都冇咁強嘅光。
It's not possible. We don't have such a light that is so powerful.
你知道咧，我哋身體咁厚啊，你把燈去射落去，啲射唔過，應該係咪？
And you know that with our body, if you shine a flashlight, then it will not go through it.
但原來我哋有啲 X 光咧，就可以照到穿個身體，可以影到我哋裏面有乜嘢嘢嘅。
But there is kind of light that X-ray that is a light that can actually go through our body.
原來意思係乜嘢咧？原來呢個精金嘅城咧，居然能夠發光，就見到好似玻璃，好似水晶啦。因為神嘅榮光咧，係比 X 光係雷射光更加強嘅。
And we can see that the city of gold and it shines like glass because the glory of God is even stronger than any X-ray or laser light.
區精金係根本對神嚟講嘅榮光係冇問題去射穿嘅。
And it's something that's easily gold is something that easily penetrated by the glory of God.
因為神嘅光係比日頭更加猛烈。
And because the glory of God is even brighter than the sun.
所以嗰一日嘅時候，我哋會大開眼界，見到神嘅精金嘅牆咧，原來俾神嘅榮光係射透咗，好似一個玻璃同埋水晶一樣。
And on that day, it will be a feast for our eye to see the glory of God shining through pure gold.
好燦爛奪目，係美不勝收，咁美麗咁靚嘅。
It's beautiful and unparalleled.
第二就係咧。我睇一睇神嘅聖殿嘅尺碼嚟，我睇一睇我哋將嚟所要承受嘅永恆嘅居所係點樣樣。
And let us look at the measurement of this new city and see, and so we could imagine the place that we're going to inherit.
約翰福音第14章裏邊第1節裏邊所講咧，即係話你唔好憂愁，唔好你要當信神你們信神亦都信我，因為我在父嘅家裏面有好多住處。如果冇嘅，我就早已經告訴你哋。我去原是為你們預備地方，我若去為你們預備地方，就必再嚟與你們到你們那裏去。我在那裏，叫你們也在那裏。
That in John chapter 14 it says, "Do not let your heart be troubled. You believed in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If there were not, would I have told you that I'm going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, and that you also may be there where I am."
主耶穌所透露就係神有天上一個家。
That Jesus revealed that God has a home.
有一個好大嘅屋，但係咧，我去為你預備一啲唔係一個房啊，乃一個豪宅。
And he said, I will go there to prepare a place for you, and not just a room, but rather a mansion.
原來啟示第21章俾我哋見到呢個神嘅家，原來係一個舉世無雙嘅一個咁大嘅巨大嘅城耶路撒冷。
In Revelation Chapter 21, it tells us that the God's home is this huge city.
喺第15至第17節裏邊所講咧，呢一個城啊個尺寸咧，原來有2200公里，即係4000嘅堂里咁長嘅，咁闊嘅。
In that 15 to 17, the verse it tells us that the places would take up about 2,200 kilometers.
我相信當神咧係特別咧指明一個尺寸嘅時候，呢個係準確尺寸，到時到後就係咁嘅尺寸。
And I believe that when God gave a number, and it will be that number when we see it.
唔係象徵式嘅。
It is not symbolism.
然後呢個2200，我再睇咧，就等於由滿地可去到溫尼僻咁遠嘅地方嘅。
And if you want to know that the distance of 22 kilometers, really the distance between from Montreal to Winnipeg.
好大嘅一個城嚟嘅，長闊高都係一樣。
It's a very, very huge city that is in terms of width and height, it's the same. It's going to encompass 22,000 kilometers.
如果我哋要了解主耶穌講話為我哋預備喺我哋城裏邊預備一個地方，有一個豪宅俾我哋要明白係點樣嘅咧，到時。
So when God said that He will prepare a place, a mansion for us, we need to see and understand what it looks like.
原來舊約裏邊咧俾我哋嘅線索可以幻想得到嘅。
But from the construction of the temple, it gives us some hints of what it will be like.
你記唔記得當神吩咐摩西啊、大衛啊同埋以西結咧係建造聖殿嘅時候，佢話一定要照着山上高向你所指示天上高呢個模型嚟建造嘅。
And when God commanded Moses, David, and also Ezekiel to build this temple, they were following the model that was in heaven.
原來其實地上高嘅聖殿係仿效天上嗰個耶路撒冷嘅設計嚟做嘅。
And the temple that they built on earth is actually was a model that followed the model that was in heaven.
當然摩西所做嘅呢個帳幕就好簡單，根本係因為嗰時候冇咁好技術啊嘛，所以佢哋只能夠喺呢個曠野裏邊咧用啲嘢嚟到好似砌成一個，但係都唔似樣。
And when Moses built the tent, because they didn't have technology, so it looked very simple.
但你見到咧，第二個嘅聖殿咧係靚好多，然後第三個更加係多啲嘅點講詳細嘅資料喺裏邊。
And as they could build the second temple and the third temple, more detail were put into it.
原來第一個咧只係一層過，然後第二個同埋第三個係三層嘅。
And the first one was only one level, but the second and third they have 3 levels.
點解咧？呢個列王記上第6章第1節裏邊所講咧，嘅所羅門嘅聖殿嘅外牆裏邊咧係有啲叫旁屋，就係咧響牆上高嘅咧係供應俾當值嘅祭司當值嘅時候可以住宿嘅。
In the First Kings chapter 6, it mentioned that in this temple, on the wall they have something called a side room. They're prepared for the priests to live in. 所以圍住呢個聖殿咧，周圍咧都有啲屋咧係俾祭司嚟到居住嘅。So surrounding the temple, they would have these side rooms to be the residence of the priests. 所以好肯定一樣嘢咧，大衛話點解我要借做耶和華殿中？其實咧就係佢知道祭司喺呢個殿裏邊可以居住嘅，而係我哋可以喺殿裏邊居住。So when David said, "I want to dwell in your house forever," he knows that the priests can live in the temple itself. 而呢啲房間、呢啲豪宅喺邊度咧？就係應當咧就好似呢個殿嘅牆上嗰個旁屋一樣咧，係圍住整個城牆都有呢個屋嘅。And when they said these mansion that Jesus talked about is probably like those side houses that surrounding the temple.
響以西結書第41章亦都係同樣講到有一日咧，佢哋要建造呢個殿咧，亦都係有幾層嘅。
And also in the book of Ezekiel chapter 41, it also mentioned that they have multi levels of these rooms.
但點解只係3層咧？
But how come there's only 3 levels?
因為當時嘅建築技術仲係好落後嘅。
Because even at that time, the technology for construction is still very backward.
起到3層已經係好大嘅挑戰啦。
To build 3 levels is already a
但
challenge.
係而家我哋現代建築術咧，我發覺咧，原來可以咁多層咁都可以嘅。
But today we can see that we could build skyscrapers.
所以當時神啟示俾佢哋嘅係一個係咁係模仿一下以後將嚟嘅聖城嘅模型，但係要求唔能夠太高啦。
And at that time, they were only building a miniature model of the actual temple. So they cannot demand too much of the technology.
事實上，佢要將2200里公里咁高咁闊嘅，又縮影到一個90乘45嘅一個聖殿嘅模型，冇可能擺到咁多嘅房間，因為主耶穌話好多房間噶嘛，喺個附加裏邊。咁其實係冇可能縮影到咁樣嘅，只不過係咁依擺跌落去，俾我哋知道原來日後有咩嘢嘅正版係點樣。
Well, it's really hard for them people at that time to build something that is 2,200 kilometers in height and to build so many rooms because there are many rooms as Jesus mentioned to us.
所以有一日咧，我哋神嘅家裏邊，我有好多房嘅居住咧，原來咧唔止係3層嘅旁屋，乃係響咧所有嘅圍住呢個聖殿嘅牆裏邊咧，有好多嘅屋係俾我哋住。
So we can imagine that at that time that there were many side rooms, not only just 3 levels, many levels of side rooms surrounding this temple.
你話我可能擔心咧，哇！如果神呢個咁啊呢個城啊有2200公里咁闊咁大啊，咁如果神就只不過擺放中間啊嗰個單位，咁我咪冇窗冇外牆冇窗，咁啊好慘噶喎咁啊！
Well, you may start to worry, but there are many rooms. But what if God put me something in between that I have no view?
等於啲人去遊船河啊，好怕咧住船艙冇窗冇剩噶嘛。
And if you go on a cruise, that you don't want a room that without any window.
尤其是如果喺中間啊，喺走廊裏邊嗰啲更加慘啦，冇外邊嘅窗咧，真係唔見天日噶嘛咁啊。
And especially you live put into a room that is inside that you don't see the sky at all.
但係我哋根據舊約嘅聖殿裏邊嚟睇咧，其實咧呢個聖殿咧，呢旁屋裏邊咧，中間係個殿咧係空嘅，係神所用嘅。
And if you read in the book of Ezekiel that actually there are open space between the wall and the temple.
唔單止咁樣原來第10節裏邊所講個旁屋與對面嘅房屋咧，係中間有個空地嘅，就係其實嗰個咁闊，即係話咧好可能咧嗰個所有嗰啲豪宅咧，都喺城牆嘅裏邊咧係對住，但係咧中間咧全部係空俾係神用嘅。
And then also he mentioned here between the side room that they will also have open space in between.
由於咁嘅緣故咧，我哋就有外景有內景啦，兩邊都可以見得到個空地嘅。
And for that reason that we will have window on both sides.
咁到底呢個豪宅有幾大咧？
Then what about the size of these mansions?
我哋睇一睇呢個經文裏邊俾我哋啲線索下，第21章第17節裏邊講，量了城牆，按照人嘅尺寸，即係天使嘅尺寸就係共有144肘。
So we look at also in the scriptures, verse 17, it said the angel measured the walls using human measurement, and it was 144 cubits.
即係呢埲牆由一邊到裏邊咧，其實144肘咧，每一肘係1.5尺嘅咧，就等於216尺咁闊嘅。
So the wall was about 144 cubits thick. So if each cubit is 1.5 feet, that means 144 cubits would about 216 feet.
所以有咁嘅可能性咧，我哋每一個人嘅單位啊，起碼有200尺咁深嘅喺呢個城牆嘅裏邊。
So for each unit of those mentioned, at least the depth will be 200 feet.
以西結書第41章第8節頭先所講嘅咧，係每個單位嘅高度應該大約係6肘，即係6乘1.5就9尺高，就等於而家現有嗰啲現代嘅房屋用嘅標準嘅高度啦。
And also in verse 8, it mentioned that the temple will have a raised base about 6 long cubits, which is about 9 feet, which is a
記住我哋嘅
standard
豪宅
height
有大約
of
200尺
modern.
咁深啊，有大約9尺咁高咁上下啦。
So you know that's about 200 feet in depth and also 9 feet in height.
聖經裏面冇講到呢個單位有幾闊。
The Bible didn't mention the width of these units.
我係咁以嚟到做一做啦，因為我而家間屋咧大概6米咁闊，即係20尺咁闊咁上下啦。咁都幾好，夠地方用噶咯。
And well, just think about what I have right now. That's about 6 meters, about 20 feet wide.
如果有20尺闊，有200尺長咁深嘅話，就有4000尺嘅用喎。
And that's enough for us. So if you just for instance assume it will be 20 feet by 200 feet, then you have 4,000 square feet.
你話呢個係唔係豪宅就唔係乜嘢咧？仲有冇可能係啲嘢咧？係好闊大嘅。
It's really a huge place.
我以前間屋晒3000尺度咧，都覺得係太多地方冇辦法啦。我哋都要搬啲細啲嘅地方。
And my previous house about the total room is about 3,000 square feet.
4000尺係好大嘅地方俾我哋。
And we found it was really a big place also. We had to move something smaller. So 4,000 square feet is a huge place.
仲有頭先以西結書裏邊第41章講到第8節咧，講到有高月台。我揾個資料係乜嘢咧？好可能係呢個有英文呢個皇家新英譯本、皇家欽定新譯本咧，係講到係terrace， 可能係一個露台嚟嘅，仲有露台可以俾埋我哋。
And also in verse 8 also mentioned there would be a raised base, and in the New King James Version, it reversed as a terrace.
講到呢個新城幾靚，頭先而家講到幾大，跟住我講一講咧，呢個豪宅咧其實係訂造俾我哋嘅。
And I also mentioned the size of this rooms. Now I want to say that this is actually these mentioned are custom made.
你要明白一樣嘢啊，到底呢個新城耶路撒冷係到底係未動工啊，還是正在興建緊呢？
You may be wondering that is this new Jerusalem? Is it just a plan or is that under construction?
你話如果為我哋度身訂造嘅話，咁就話未做噶啦，係咪啊？未動工啦，或者正在興建緊啦。
You say that is custom made, that mean that they haven't started building it yet, right?
我要解釋個真理俾大家知道。
I want to explain to you a truth.
希伯來書第4章第3節裏邊所講，神造萬物嘅工咧，係從創世以嚟已經係完成咗噶啦。
That in the book of Hebrews chapter 4 is that the work that were finished from the foundation of the world.
佢意思話神造呢個世界嘅時候，佢個居所啊，其實已經係完成咗建造噶啦。
So when God created, during the creation, that this God's dwelling place is already finished.
換句話嚟講，神為我哋所有兒女所建造、所預備嘅房屋，其實已經係預備咗嘅。
Meaning all the room that's prepared for his children is already done, all finished.
每一次有人得救舉手嘅時候，對唔住，再加間房，再起多間，裝修過，重新裝修過。
It's not like every time that someone come and say that I want to believe that God will have to renovate the place.
咁啊慘啦！神嗰間聖城啊，要成日係裝修啊，因為成日要加啲房、加啲單位落去。
Because then in that way, this new Jerusalem or new city will be always under construction.
我哋明白唔係咁嘅，原來咧神喺我哋未出生之前，早已經為我哋安排咗啲永恆嘅居所。
But we need to know that it is not this way. That before that even we were born, in God have already prepared for us a place in this new Jerusalem.
因為佢未創造呢個世界嘅時候，已經知道有乜嘢，已經認識我哋，明白我哋係為我哋預備好我哋嘅。
Because even before He created this. The creation that God knew us and He understood us.
亞伯拉罕未死，佢已經見到神為佢所預備嘅永恆嘅居所啦。
And before Abraham died, he already saw the place that the eternal place that God prepared for him.
佢見到呢個之後，喺異象中見到之後咧，佢就下咗決心，佢話 世界上有任何幾靚嘅都唔及神所預備夠咁靚。
And after he saw a vision of this place, that he said, "There's nothing on this earth can be compared to that place that God
冇
prepared
得
for him."
比啊！所以佢乜嘢都唔要啊，只係要個一生目標就要去嗰度神為佢預備嘅。
And in his Abraham's heart, his only have eyes for the place that God prepared for
點解
him.
話神為我哋度身訂造咧？
Why do I say that God had custom made for us
我
this
哋知道
place?
呢個神為我哋預備居所，唔係隨隨便便嘅，唔係即係交俾呢個建築師或者天使嚟有建造，係千篇一律。
And we need to know that God, when God built this place, is not that He casually gave to the angels or an architect to do so. So everything will be the same.
喺呢個希伯來書第11章第10節裏邊所講咧，佢話亞伯拉罕所見到呢個有根基嘅城係神所親手建造同埋經營嘅。嗱，英文裏邊咧係用呢個 architect 同埋 builder， 即係神佢係呢個畫則師，佢係呢一個建築師。
That in Hebrew it says that for he waited for a city which has foundation, whose builder and maker is God. Actually, in some translation, is used the architect and builder.
你要知道神如果係個畫則師嘅時候，佢係最點講啊？最叻嘅畫則師，佢係設計係最精心嘅設計。
And you know that God is the best architect, and He's what He designed would be meticulous.
而係神佢親自建造，唔係交俾任何嘅判頭啊、工頭嚟去做嘅。
And God built it Himself, and did not rely on any other contractors.
如果神親手建造嘅，就唔會馬馬虎虎偷工減料，乃係真材實料做嘅。
And if God built it by Him, built it Himself, then it was something of substance.
呢個啟示第21章第18節嘅牆係碧玉做嘅，城牆係精金嘅。
That in the Revelation Chapter 21:18, it said the wall will make a jasper and the city of pure gold. 係落咗最貴重嘅材料嚟為你嚟到去設計預備你嘅以後嘅居所。And it was built and prepared for you with the most precious things.
我相信神所為你所預備嘅豪宅係為你度身訂造，係精心設計嘅。
And I believe the mansion that God had prepared for you is custom made for you.
你買過新屋嘅人都知道，當你買嘅時候咧，佢當常係整個殼，然後咧等你嚟到揀有乜嘢嘅廳係點樣間隔啊、廚房啊、睡房啊、嘅雙乜嘅飾物啊，或者係裝飾品啊，或者係地板係點樣啊，地氈係顏色係點樣，係讓你嚟到揀嘅。
If you have bought a house before that, you know that they will allow you to pick the layout of the place, and you could also later on pick out all the materials for the different things like carpets, carpets or knobs or tabletops or everything.
所以雖然外邊睇嚟每一間屋都好似一樣，但係入到裏邊嘅時候，間都有唔同嘅款式，係合嗰個屋主嘅心水嘅。
Even though from outside the houses all the same, but when you go inside, it's quite different. It's really according to the liking of the owner.
正如神設計嘅雪花，每一個都唔同，係獨一無二嘅。
Just as God created the snowflake, each one is different. 正如
神佢賞賜得勝嘅人，佢話：你如果得勝嘅時候，我要將我生命寫喺裏邊，係獨一無二嘅，係只係你有嘅啫。
And for those who are victorious, God will give you like that God will give you a new name.
所以我相信我哋每一個神所為我哋預備嘅豪宅咧，係獨特嘅，係唔同，係你所喜歡，係合你心意嘅。
A name that is unique only to you. So, in the same way, when God prepares us for a mansion, it is something that is unique to you.
唔單止咁嘅神話，佢話我喺你面上嗰度寫咗個名，其實仲有一樣嘢就係，我相信咧，我哋嘅所有嘅用具為我哋預備嘅時候，已經係刻咗呢個花押字喺裏邊。
And I believe that all things that God had prepared for us, He already has put our initial on it.
係特別為我哋預備嘅。
Is especially prepared for us.
係冇人同你爭，係指定係俾你嘅，唔算同人哋爭房嘅。
No one can fight with you because your name is on it.
因為係你嘅，唔係第啲人嘅，係為你預備嘅。
And it is yours and no one else's.
你要明白神其實愛我哋，好似眼中嘅瞳人同埋掌上嘅明珠。
We need to know that God loves us as we are the apple of His eye.
喺呢個以賽亞書第49章裏邊咧，講到神點關心我哋咧，係比母親係更加甚嘅。
And in the book of Isaiah chapter 49, that God cared for us even more than a mother for the
佢
child.
有邊個母親能夠忘記佢吃奶嘅兒女？但係如果甚至乎到一個地步，佢哋忘記，佢話神話佢卻唔會忘記。
It said even though a mother may forget about the baby at her breast, but even though that I will not forget.
佢話我將你銘刻我掌上。
He said that I engraved you on my palm.
即係好似咧將佢咧係寫咗紋咗身咁樣寫咗喺裏邊咧，你個名寫咗喺神嘅手裏邊嘅意思。
That means that your name is tattooed in the palm of God.
呢個唔係我最重要所講嘅啦，係跟住嗰句啊，就係佢話連你嘅牆垣啊，你嘅埲牆啊，都係時常喺我眼嘅前邊。
But furthermore, more importantly, that your walls are ever before me.
呢個經文其實我以前解釋過啊，我今日係重複嘅啫。咁你話邊一埲牆啊？
And I explained this concerning the wall before, so you may ask, which wall is it?
我一生裏邊搬咗將近30次屋啊，喺香港直到而家搬咗30次到，咁樣啲房間啊，啲嘅設計啊之類，我都唔記得好多啲係。
And throughout my life in Hong Kong and also here, I moved about 30 times. I don't remember the walls and the rooms of all these
你話
places.
神記得我哋埲牆到底係邊一埲啊？
So what is this wall that God just before God?
當然唔係你嘅舊屋嘅牆啦。
Of course, it's not the wall in the whole house.
你舊屋嘅又舊又啲顏色都舊咗啦，係唔重要嘅。你可以完全忘記佢，神都唔會紀念嗰啲嘢。
And those are not important. It's old erased, and neither will God remember those.
喺天堂上嗰一切都會忘記嘅，呢啲唔需要記住嘅。
And when you're in heaven, you will forget all these things.
神佢話：我記得你埲牆就係指嘅佢為你預備天上嗰個豪宅嘅埲牆。
And God said that your walls are forever before me is the wall that you have in your mansion
因為
in
佢
heaven.
愛我哋地步，其實佢係戀慕，係渴慕一日能夠我哋搬到佢嘅家嘅裏邊。
And God loved to the point of where that He's looking forward to the time that we will move into this
佢
new
為你
home.
預備嗰啲所有嘅豪宅啊，已經係好精心設計。佢其實好想你快嚟到去享受佢嘅。
And God could not wait for you to come and move into this new place.
佢有乜嘢喺度當中設計？佢記得連埲牆係點樣，佢都記住啊
That！ He designed for you, that He remembered the design that He made just uniquely for you.
佢想起你個名，想起你埲牆。
He remembered your name and the wall that's before Him.
佢希望一日佢嘅夢想能得到實現，就係你能夠接到你去家嘅裏邊，能夠享受佢精心嘅設計，佢所建築嘅豪宅。
And one day that His dream will come true, that we will move into this place that He meticulously designed for you.
佢急不及待，係渴望嗰一日嚟到。
He cannot wait and look forward to that time.
你可以咧經過世界上嗰所有嘅艱難嘅途徑，然後安然抵達呢個天家裏邊，係接受佢永遠嘅安排同永遠嘅安慰。
You can leave everything that you have on this earth and go to enter into His rest and receive His comfort.
難怪亞伯拉罕咁渴慕一日去到神嘅家裏邊。
And no wonder Abraham looked forward so much to enter into
世
this
界上最
heavenly
靚
home.
最好嘅，對佢都冇晒吸引力啦。
Because everything that's the best on this earth cannot compare.
弟兄姊妹啊，
Brothers and sisters.
神就係咁樣為我哋預備一個美好嘅家鄉。
And this is how God prepared a place for us.
最後講，最後第21章第7節。
Lastly, Revelation chapter 21,
到底
verse
我
7.
哋有咩資格先要入到去咧？
So how do we qualify to go into this new city?
當然我哋要得救啦。但係呢度所講嘅得勝嘅，必定承受這個地為業。我要作他們嘅神，他們要作我兒子。
It said here in verse 7, those who are victorious will inherit all this, and I will be their God, and they will be my children.
我冇辦法係點樣正式嚟解釋咁樣。
I cannot really explain to you how this will be.
到底係因信得救啊，還是係得勝得救？我唔能夠點講。
I cannot say if you saved by faith or you saved because you're victorious.
但呢度好明顯講話，如果得勝就必定會承受呢個產業。
But it's very clearly it states here that those who are victorious will inherit all this.
有冇咁嘅可能？神嘅要求係高過少少啲未定，我唔知道。
And perhaps that God's requirements is if it is even a higher standard, I don't know.
但係我覺得，如果我哋基督徒做得勝嘅基督徒係值得嘅，
And for us to be a victorious Christian is worth it.
係應當嘅。
And it's something we should be doing.
膽怯嘅係不信嘅，可憎嘅咧係佢瞓喺外邊嘅硫磺火湖裏邊。
And because it follows that those coward, unbelieving, and the murderers and sexual immoral, they will be consigned to the lake of
雖
fire.
然神嘅天上高嘅應許係咁美好，但我哋唔好只係停留喺個地步，就係只係信咗佢算數啦。但係我哋要做一個得勝嘅人。
And since whatever God had prepared, the salvation of God is so good, we should not just be stagnant and stay in one place. We should want to be and desire to be victorious.
然後我哋會覺得值得嘅。
And afterward, we'll find everything is worth it.
呢個勝過人生嘅就係引誘挑戰，
To overcome all the temptation and challenges in life,
人生嘅一切嘅攻擊，
and also the attack from the enemy,
或者一切嘅打擊，或者一切嘅失敗，
all the discouragements, all the failures,
勝過我哋人生嘅惰性，
and to overcome our own
甚至
personality,
乎勝過呢個疫情嘅一切嘅威脅。
and also all the threats of this pandemic.
我哋需要學習做一個得勝人，有一日去得到神所為我哋預備嘅永恆嘅
We
家。
need to learn to be a victorious person to receive what God has prepared for us.
我哋
as
唱一首歌，
inheritance. Let's sing a song.
係我諗係我哋粵曲小組係而家練緊呢有首歌，不如你喺呢度唱一唱，係呢個貓王企皮點啊 Elvis Presley 唱過嘅。
And we are also practicing this in a singing group. That's a song that's sang by Elvis Presley.
It may not be there, just key of C. Oh, yeah, you have that. Okay, let's stand. Pick up the rhythm a little bit. I'm satisfied with just a cottage below, a little silver, a little gold. But in the city where the ransom will shine, I want a gold one, the silver line. I got a mansion just over the hilltop, in that bright land where we'll never grow old. And someday yonder we'll never more wander, but walk the streets that are pure as gold. Those often tempted, tormented and tested, and like the